Hi, Ace Bergman, and welcome to Jojo Fry Rocks. And thank you so much for agreeing to do this today. I'm sure everybody knows who you are, or people who watch my channel. I'm sure will know who you are. But in case anyone's not watched my channel before and isn't particularly into Guns N' Roses and stuff. Ace is the guitar tech for Slash, which is like one of my absolute lifelong guitar heroes ever since I've started listening to music. So I'm obviously really, really, really thrilled to get to speak to you. And I have, as I said, just now, I've got a bunch of questions for you. But I just thought maybe it'd be good to start with just like a little intro about you and your background. Like, how did you get into this gig? And,
sure.
And how did you end up working with Slash?
Well, first, I should say that I'm not Slash's main guitar tech right now. I am a guitar tech for Slash, and I have been his main guitar tech in the past. Slash and I are very close. This last summer, I was stage manager for the Serpent tour.
Right. Okay. Wow.
So he does have a guitar tech that is not me, and he's a very good friend of mine. But his current guitar tech does not like doing press or any sort of recognition, which is why I get to do interviews for him. So
okay, because I was going to say, because I have seen, there's not loads out.
If I look older on stage, that's not me.
Right.
So
I've seen a few of your interviews, some from quite a while ago, and some from fairly recently this year. So
I've done both. I get tapped on the shoulder to, hey, Ace, I'm busy. Go talk to Gibson for me. And I'm more than happy to do it. I used to host. So to get into how I got into the music business, my first job in the music business, I call it a job. It was unpaid, but I was a host of a death metal TV show. And we were broadcast. So I was in front of a camera before I was ever, in a guitar world working on guitars. So this part comes a little more naturally to me than guys who just want to, hide in the shadows. And I'm not attention seeking, this is somebody else's show, your show in this case. But, I'm also not I don't necessarily need to be the wizard behind the curtain. I'm not afraid to talk,
Well, this is the the idea of this kind of series of interviews that I want to do is focusing on that kind of wizard behind the curtain. I came up with this idea of the heroes behind the legends, because really without you guys and your team, there is no show. So
there'd be a show. It'd just be a lot smaller.
And out of tune, and things breaking down, and
It'd be in a coffee shop instead of a stadium.
Yeah. all of that stuff, and who's going to carry the amps, so that there wouldn't be a show. I'm really, really interested in what you just said actually about death metal, because I'm going to probably be jumping around all sorts of places, but one of the questions that I had for you is, what type of music do you like, and what are you into, and what were your early sort of musical influences? So obviously that's got to be one of them.
Okay. Well, I'm wearing as you can clearly see, I'm wearing a Blood Incantation shirt right now. I just went and saw them last week. Great band. I don't know any of them. I just bought a ticket, and the guy I was going to go with had to do a tattoo at the last minute, so I went by myself. But yeah, I started. My dad was in the music business, not to the degree I am. He was a paralegal, and when I was a little boy, he worked for Kim Fowley and people like Rodney Bingenheimer. So he was deep in the Hollywood scene with bands like the Runaways and
oh, cool, Lita Ford and
Joan Jett.
Yeah, Joan Jett. So
yeah,
is that where you grew up? Is that where you?
Yes, I was born and raised in Hollywood. Well, Culver City, I was born in Hollywood. I was born on Sunset Boulevard.
No way.
Yeah, right down the street from the whiskey and the
rainbow and
yeah. So I don't spend a whole lot of time on the Sunset Strip anymore, but that's where I cut my teeth. That's where, literally I was born there when I started in the music business, when I interviewed death metal bands. I've done countless shows at the Whiskey, the Roxy, the Troubadour. That's where the LA music scene happens. The industry, LA, there's a music scene and there's a music industry. LA, we have both. I'm not in LA. I'm in Michigan, where there's just a scene. Mm-hmm. A little bit of an industry here, thanks to Jack White. But yeah, so, you have, your music scene, which is all the guys playing at the club, in your music industry, which is, all of Kiss's stuff getting loaded into semi trucks to go to, the airport. So there's both, and we have both in LA. And I was, very, very lucky to be able to, make the transition from a scene to the industry. But it is different. I hang out with different people now and stuff like that for the most part. So yeah, but yeah, my early I'm going to jump around too. I have ADD.
No, that's absolutely fine, and please do go ahead because so early on in that scene.
I was by the time I have any memories, my dad was out of the music scene. I know that one of Venus and the Razor Blades was my babysitter. But my earliest memories, my dad was a carpenter. So I remember, I have a little hammer over here from when I used to go to work with my dad. And we'd ride around in his car, and he listened to a lot of oldies, Jackie Wilson, the Beatles.
Beatles.
The Beatles, obviously. That's where, if you didn't grow up on the Beatles, feel sorry for you. Or maybe you're Vietnamese or something. Oh, that's cool. They probably grew up on the Beatles too now.
I think it's like you say, you must have grown up, I don't know, underwater or on the moon or something if you didn't, if you're a music fan and you didn't have the Beatles somewhere in that background. Well,
and I mean, you and I love the Beatles, but the Beatles were 50 years ago. So it's totally possible for, a young person now to just, my daughter's 3 months and she listens to the Beatles, but it's totally possible for, people to grow up without hearing them. That's okay.
Well, yeah, certainly with, it's the same thing with me and my children. They're 7 and 5, and they listen to whatever we put on. So that's, they don't really have much of a say in it. Although
I don't necessarily, I haven't introduced my daughter to Morbid Angel yet, but, we listen to, I don't just listen to death metal. I listen to, world music and classical music, and I have a favorite polka artist. I purposely try and find stuff I wouldn't find otherwise, or look for new music. I found this. Yeah,
that's interesting. So have you always been like that, or no. Was it like when you were younger and as a teenager and growing up?
As a teenager, it was all about the heaviest, fastest music I could find. So I started, like I said, I started with the Beatles, and the song that really got me into guitar was Wild Thing by the Troggs. That first bend and that kind of sloppy behind the beat playing just had so much attitude. And that, you know, I hadn't heard somebody play a guitar like it was a living thing. Like, you know, before that, music, you know, instruments existed in the mix and bubbled along, you know. And the first time I heard that, you know, like, it was like that guitar just drops in, just so much attitude. And that was just the coolest thing I'd ever heard, and still is. And so then I knew guitars were cool and I wanted to play guitar, but you know, when you're 6, nobody wants to buy you a guitar. They tell you need to learn saxophone or something else first. So I got a saxophone.
No way, Rick. That's a funny approach, I think, because I mean, I guess as a guitarist, I'm buying my kids ukuleles, guitars. And
my daughter had a guitar before she was born.
Yeah, exactly. But so you got started on the sax then?
I did. I started on the sax, and we didn't have a lot of money, so I couldn't get anyone to buy me a guitar. So I wanted an electric guitar from when I was about 7. When I was about 13, my dad had like like so many dads back in the 80s and 90s, had a nylon string acoustic with an action so high you could put another guitar underneath it.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned on. You know, through high school, I sat, on, in my, I lived in, my parents got divorced and all that fun stuff. I got into drugs. And I was living like in a little house on the garage. And, I was learning Slayer songs on a nylon string, zero radius fretboard with strings that were older than I am. Probably broke one at some point and tied it back on. And, it was mostly out of tune. So that's what I learned on. And, that's all I had. And then, I went to high school. My parents moved out of LA, so I ended up going to high school in a small town where there was no one to learn music from. We had an exchange student from Zagreb when I was 15, and I played guitar a little bit, and he was in a metal band, and he showed me some riffs, and that was really cool. He taught me some stuff, so that was a little bit of a seed, and then he moved away, and I never really play with anymore. And then finally,
so you didn't have like lessons or anything. You were just
it was
yourself on this beat up old guitar, just
like. And I had like
magazines.
I had some books, like I had a Slayer book that I studied forward and back.
And they're always wrong, aren't they? Those tab books. They're always like pretty. I
never got so deep in, like, it was enough for me to get a framework and to develop a technique. If like it was a half step off here and there, I wouldn't have known. But it was enough to give me a goal. And then I had a Pink Floyd one that I couldn't get myself to sound like David Gilmour, and I didn't know why. I didn't know anything about melody or chord structure, so I didn't know why he was playing what he did. So that book was kind of, I could play something out of it, but it didn't make any sense to me. Whereas, trem picking on a low E string and stabbing some power chords made sense.
No, you're absolutely, I get where you're coming from, because so much of sort of David Gilmour's playing and his solos and stuff, like on paper, might look quite straightforward to play, but then when you play it, doesn't sound like how it sounds on the track.
And I don't have, not only do I not have his rig or his touch, or I don't have Richard Wright and Nick Mason backing me up, and I don't have any idea why so I could play do 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 do, and that sounds cool, but I don't know where to go from there.
No.
Pink Floyd's wonderful, but trying to sound like Pink Floyd's sort of a fool's errand. Like nobody's Radiohead can't do it. So, like, why, I could pretend, a lot of people can fake Slayer and come up with a band. Most people that try and fake Pink Floyd just make some kind of soup nobody wants to eat.
That's such a good quote. I'm going to use that one.
Sure.
You're absolutely right. And there's a lot of kind of argument in the guitar community around kind of
guitar players who love to argue. Nobody wants to practice. They want to argue.
Yeah, no, they do. That's true. It's true. But there's a whole thing, isn't there, about like, where does tone come from? It
comes from your hands. I'll tell you that right now. All this shit behind me is nice, but if none of this makes me sound like anyone else. Slash gave me that. Is that the one he gave me? No. Slash gave me that JCM 800 over there. I don't sound like him. He gave me that guitar over there. I don't sound like him. It's out of the frame. It's actually in the other room.
I'm looking as if I can see it.
Yeah, it's in a case. Tone is. It's in. I mean, obviously, a Fender Deluxe sounds different from a triple rectifier. No joke. Mm-hmm. But it's the way you play. If you can't play, all the gear in the world's not going to save you. And if you can play, you can have fun with a rubber band on a, cigar box.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm pretty sure I could hand Slash any one of my guitars and he would make it sound like Slash. I'm pretty sure.
Looks like they all have maple necks.
Quite a few of them. A few of them do. Got an Ibanez RG550. That's nice. Got a nice maple neck. 2 Squires, so a Squire Strat and a Squire thin line Telly, which is.
I'm a big Telly fan now.
That's an absolutely lovely guitar. And I have one I made. This one I made, which is very, very old because I made it when I was at school when I was 16.
I love the curve.
It's a very, very strange shape because I drew it by hand, and
it's unique. I like it. So many people cop another shape, and it's a weird hybrid of stuff because I tried to make it Jazzmaster with a Talman headstock.
I tried to do a bit like a Jag Stang type thing because I was really into Nirvana. And so I tried to do like an offset thing.
Yeah.
But it's very, very heavy. It's made of, it's all made out of mahogany, like the body and the neck. It's solid mahogany because I'd done my research and I also liked Guns N' Roses. I loved Slash and I knew he played a Les Paul, and Les Pauls, they tend to...
Mahogany guitar.
Yeah. So I was like, right, I'm getting some mahogany. My friend's grandfather had a boat yard, and so I got some cuts of mahogany from the boat building yard, which I didn't have to pay for, which was fantastic.
Yeah, so, no, mahogany, that's probably $100-something worth of wood alone in mahogany.
A decent amount of wood, and it's very, very heavy. So I can't stand and play it for very long at all. So I'm quite small, and it just absolutely kills my neck. But yeah, and I also have I've got a Rick.
Is that a 6 or a 12?
It's a 6 string.
Good, smart. Those 12s. If you ever change the strings on one, you'll sell it the next time the strings go bad. Like I would literally, if I played a Rickenbacker 12 string, I'd buy a new one when the strings went bad. Just about an
What's the difficulty about a Rickenbacker 12 string?
The way if you look, the headstock is the same size. So the way it works is they have both the capstan tuners like yours, and they have the cut acoustic or like nylon string channels, where basically it's all the entire assembly is about this big. You can't stick strings through. You're always poking your fingers. You're in there doing surgery with a pair of hemostats.
Well, you see, this is it. So obviously the John Lennon one was the 12 string. But this was a present from my dad for my 21st birthday. And he thought he was getting me the John Lennon guitar.
He got you the right one.
Well, I think I got the better. Yeah, I definitely got the better end of the deal. Because I don't think he'd realised that was a 12 string. So he'd got me it looks similar, to be honest.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, I had to ask which it was. I have one 12 string guitar and I play it a bit because they sound cool, and I only have one 12 string guitar. But yeah, they're a pain in the butt.
Well, this is going to bring me on to another question, because as a guitar tech, obviously you work with a few different types of guitar. Although I think Slash, I know he tends to stay with the Les Pauls, but I know that he does switch it up sometimes, and I've seen him with Firebirds, Explorers, different kinds of guitars. So are there any that are like really nice to work with, really easy to work with, and which ones do you really, really not like working with, if any of them? Because like for me, anything with a Floyd Rose, I've got a Floyd on this one. And as you were saying before, like last time I changed the strings, I thought about selling it, because it took me like a number of weeks, literally, to get this sorted out.
The way to approach a Floyd Rose or any, floating bridge guitar is it's just a big balancing act. You just sort of visualize all the different forces working on it at the same time. One key thing is only change one string at a time. Okay. So like, when you take your E string off, put the new E string back on and just ignore the other strings, because they will keep the tension on the bridge. If you take all the strings off, then the bridge slams into the body, springs go flying out the back, and you're starting off at square one, chasing, the whole thing's flat. You tune, if you're trying to tune it sharp, by the time you get back to your low E string and you get to the high E string, it's flat again. So you got to tune sharper and you want it to go. Oh. So if you're starting from scratch, it's a pain in the butt. There's some tricks, but the easiest way to change strings on a Floyd Rose is one string at a time. Take the old E string off, put the new E string on, tune it up. Take the old A string off, put the new A string on, tune it up. That way you're always maintaining tension on the bridge. So you do not lose that tension on the bridge. Do not lose that balancing act, because then you're installed.
You're just screwed, aren't you? And I can't imagine I can't imagine having to kind of having to maintain and look after something with a Floyd Rose. But I could be wrong, but I don't think any of Slash's guitars.
Sure, he does. There's Floyd Roses. He doesn't take them on every tour. So the red BC Rich, the You Could Be Mine guitar, was the original Floyd Rose guitar, and he does some dive bombs on that. There's a couple other songs, Nothing Left to Say, that he did with M. Shadows from Avenged Sevenfold. He plays a Floyd Rose on that. He can play those songs without the Floyd Rose, but I work with bands with Floyd Roses, and I came up playing guitar in the 90s in death metal, so I learned on Floyd Roses. I prefer not to use them. So to go back to your original question, all the Gibson stuff, they're different shapes, but as long as it's a tune-o-matic and it's all the same hardware. So the difference between a Firebird and an SG and a Les Paul, mechanically is negligible. They sound different and they're constructed different, and they might have different necks, but changing this, and like, Firebird might have mandolin tuners or something like that. But, yeah, there's none of his guitars that are, obviously he has nice guitars. So if anything didn't work or didn't sound right, or, we get high-end components. If I don't, if a bridge acts suspect, we throw it out and throw a new Tone Pros on. There's no reason to worry or, wonder. If anything, if there's any suggestion like something might fail, you just replace it. So yeah, and all of his, both, all of Slash's guitar techs, there's not many of us, obviously, and we're all top tier. So if his other guitar tech put a guitar away and I take it out of a case, I know it's going to be in great shape. So all of his stuff is, it's F1 cars. It's, the oil's changed every 50 feet. It's like they're all very highly maintained.
So you've got string change every time he plays, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. There's some guitars, like if he'll play like a slide tuning or something. If there's a guitar he plays one song, you can usually wipe the strings down with alcohol to get the sweat off and get 2, maybe 3 shows out of it. But yeah, he's very caustic. But yeah, all of his stuff, money's no object, time's no object. So, we put the work in.
I guess because he's got so many, I guess it's a case of like during a show, you will have a number of spares to just swap out in case.
Everything has one spare, generally speaking. Yeah, everything usually has one spare. Like some stuff, like, he plays a lot of stuff on an E flat Les Paul. So he'll have, some stuff he likes to play on a gold top E flat Les Paul. But if it bursts into flames, he can play it on a burst Les Paul E flat. But yeah, anything he plays is going to have a backup. That's just the way we roll. Even if it's, when I was out with Guns N' Roses, there was one song in the set that wasn't in the set, that it was just could be played. Like it could have been an audible, and maybe it was Better. No, I think Better was in the set. But there was one song that had a specific guitar that was possibly, I don't think we ever did it, or maybe we did it once while I was on the tour, and that guitar had a spare. So, if Axl randomly called out that song and we started playing it, and then that guitar died, we're talking about, 4% chance Axl's going to call that song, and then on top of that, 3% chance that guitar is going to die. There's a spare. So, when your show's making, 50 million bucks, you don't have, there's no excuses for it to end. Which,
and I guess that's the same with amps and everything as well. You'll have, the
multiples of everything. Yeah, people ask me, a lot of people ask me, what's the worst gear problem you've had on stage? And we carry enough spares, and that my entire rig could get struck by lightning, and I could probably pull together a spare. Lightning would be, if it kills everything at once, you're screwed. But there's nothing in there that can die that I can't seamlessly replace.
Yeah.
Just the stakes are way too high. Like there's no, like, people expect, like, I broke a string at the, Super Bowl, and it doesn't really happen. That can't happen. Break a string at the Super Bowl, that'd suck, but that's on your artist.
But I'm pretty sure that like Slash could break a string and keep on playing.
Yeah, no, he's skilled enough that like he can. There's 5 more.
Yeah,
he can transpose. If he goes slightly out of tune, he can bend himself back into tune. You'll see him. Like my B string's flat, so I have to push up 2 cents worth of bend this whole run, and he does it. You'll hear about it later. He'll pull it off. Yeah, no, he's got a phenomenal ear. I mean, he's a tremendous guitar player.
Oh yeah, yeah, and like in terms of like working with him. So how long have you actually been kind of working with him? Kind of.
This is 13 and a half years now.
So I was going to say it must have been something like that, because I think one of the earliest sort of interviews I've seen with you on YouTube was from about 12 years ago. So yeah, I thought it must have been quite a while.
I started with him after the solo album Tour Cycle. So I met him when I met him in Los Angeles. The first thing I did with him was the Cypress Hill 20th anniversary show at the Troubadour. Cypress Hill hired me, and Slash, and so Slash, he hates when I say this. He was my hero growing up. I mean, I mention all the death metal and stuff, but yeah, no, when I was 10.
He's all our hero.
Yeah. When I was 10, I saw the Paradise City video and changed my life. And then when I was 31, that dude adopted me. So, yeah.
So, but you were working with Cypress Hill, and that's not a band that I've heard of in a long time.
They're still around. They don't hire guitar techs. They're a hip hop band, but my roommate at the time worked for Cypress Hill. I lived in a house full of, at the time I was living in the punk rock or the Poor Kids Mansion, which is a punk rock house in LA with a bunch of other roadies and strippers and drug dealers and upstanding individuals. And so that's how I met Slash. And, we hit it off. And the second thing I did with him was the Comedy Central roast of Charlie Sheen. That was a lot of fun.
That was amazing. I remember that. Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. That was like 2 weeks after I met him. And then he had just started working on Apocalyptic Love. So I came into the studio with him. I wasn't in the studio full-time on Apocalyptic Love because they didn't really budget for it. He didn't have a full-time guitar tech at the time when they started. So I wasn't in the budget to be there every day or in the plan to be there every day. So I went by about once a week and set up guitars and tuned them and stuff. And I just sort of stuck with him and then kept doing live shows. And then one day he said, so you want to do the tour? And I said, yes. And he said, just so you know, when it starts, it doesn't stop. And I said, okay. He said, no, you don't understand. It doesn't stop. And I said, okay. And he's right. Doesn't stop. So yeah. And that's
what does that mean? What doesn't stop?
He works more than, I mean, I've worked with a lot of bands over the years. But he doesn't stop. Like he we would finish. Usually you finish a tour and you say goodbye to everybody and go your separate ways. We would do an 8-week tour and he'd say goodbye to everybody except me because I was going to see him Monday morning at the studio. Like we literally would fly off of one tour and on to another. Okay. At one point I spent one night in my own bed in like 7 months.
Wow.
Yeah, it never, like I had no, I had no identity, no personal life. I lost all my friends just because I couldn't do anything. People are like, hey, I'm having a party this weekend. Oh, sorry, I'm in Africa with Duff, and eventually people stopped calling you, inviting you places. So yeah, I did that for a number of years, but yeah, no, it doesn't stop. And I had to, eventually I kind of had to reclaim my life and,
but that kind of is, I think, part and parcel of the life, isn't it? Of kind of being, road crew and a guitar tech. Like I have a friend who I met when he was the guitar tech for Justin Hawkins in The Darkness, which is that was how I met him. And I've maybe seen him 3 or 4 times in the last 20 years because like you're never, like you say, you're never around, you're never in the same place, you're always away. It must be quite a hard life in a lot of ways.
Yes, it's definitely, I mean, when I was 13, my parents moved up to the Eastern Sierras from Los Angeles and bought a hotel. And I lived in the hotel with my parents, and we would have transients, highway people come work with us, work for us. And, so I was displaced and living among road people from about 14 years old. And then my parents got divorced and I moved, I was couch surfing, and then I joined the Marines and got, stationed in Japan. And
oh, wow.
So I've always been something of a, rolling stone.
Yeah.
As they say, I'm so, like, I just had my first kid and I'm 46. So, I have, yes, I've lived on the road, and, I'm taking some time off now. I've been in this house. I haven't been anywhere in a whole month, and it's been years since I've been in one place for a month.
But I mean, it's that's how life changes when you start a family and you have children, and congratulations on doing that. I mean, those first few months are really, really, really special, really, really lovely, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
And, I know it's difficult and everything, and it must be quite a dramatic change for you. But I'm sure, I'm sure it's kind of something that you're quickly getting used to.
Sure. I mean, I'm not the youngest parent. Everyone says you don't know what to expect, and I've seen kids a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm definitely, as far as parents go, compared to 20 years ago, I'm a lot more emotionally and financially stable. So that's kind of nice, And you probably are quite like, after kind of the experience that you've had, I expect you're quite like resilient in terms of not needing that much sleep, for example. Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it, but I'm also a little bit older and kind of do like my sleep now. So it's a trade-off.
It is.
Yeah, I can wake up and operate on very little sleep. I don't like it, but no. I can do it.
But I would have thought, having kind of been out on the road and, with all that kind of rock and roll lifestyle, you don't get a lot of sleep. You don't get a lot of downtime. Like you say, you're always doing something and going somewhere. And it's kind of, I think, probably quite good preparation for those kind of early stages anyway.
I definitely have more discipline than, I don't know who I'm comparing myself to, than I would otherwise. I don't know.
Cool. So we've got to like how you met Slash, because you were kind of roommates with crew for Cypress Hill. But what were you kind of in the music scene at that point yourself?
Oh yeah, no, I'd been a guitar tech for a number of years. Yeah. Like I didn't just, Slash was definitely not where I started.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No. I started, like I said, I was a host on a death metal TV show, and then we ran out of money after 2 seasons. We were broadcast, but this was pre-YouTube. So, you had to come up with a lot of money to stay on the air. And then that folded, and I knew I wanted to stay in the music business. But at the time, I was kind of weary about, I didn't even have a band at the time. I had one a couple years later, and we toured, and that was a lot of fun. Some of the best times of my life were when I didn't have to hand away my tuned guitar. I got to play my own music.
What? So were you signed? Like, did you have a record deal and stuff?
My band?
Yeah.
No. We were a very volatile grindcore band. We did some touring, and we had a real strong underground following. We could draw, hundreds of devoted fans, but we were very volatile. A lot of drugs, a lot of, my singer and my drummer were dating. So that was a little built-in drama right now.
Yeah. It's a little bit Fleetwood Mac.
A little bit. Yeah. And so that would, relationship problems would immediately turn into band problems. But the intensity of that band was hard to, I'm really proud of the work we did, and the we had an intensity to our band that was hard to capture. Our singer, she's gone now, but she would, fight the crowd, and the mosh pit would engulf the stage. I can't tell you how many. I think at one point I counted the police came to 8 of our shows in a row or something. Like the police knew, like it was, I don't know if they had our schedule or what, but they would show up and with like helicopters when we would play.
Yeah.
And disperse these hundreds of kids. I miss it. It was like anarchy, and just, it was so fun. We played a lot of abandoned warehouses. So much of it legal,
very cool.
Like abandoned warehouses, dead end streets, basements. It was very, very crusty punk. We had kids, like homeless kids, that would train hop to follow us on tour.
Do you have any like recordings, or are there any videos?
So my singer like I said, she was very volatile. And every time we'd go into the studio, we'd cut guitars and drums and bass, and then she'd get into some knockdown, drag out fight with the producer, and we'd be stuck with some instrumental tracks. The name of my band was Dude Fucking Hell Yeah, all one word with an exclamation point at the end. And there's like some stuff on YouTube. This was 2004 and 5. So this was, again, pre-YouTube. This was the MySpace era. I think our MySpace page still exists.
I didn't realize that MySpace still exists. I thought that
I think it does. I think I've been on there once or twice, just out of curiosity.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to have a look.
But yeah, you can Google my band. There's a song on there that's very, very raw and very fast with a lot of screaming and blast beats. But yeah, like I miss my band. My old drummer moved to Seattle. He and I are still in touch. He's one of my best friends. He plays in a band. He plays in several bands. Reburied is one of the death metal bands he's in right now. They tour. Unfortunately, they usually tour in the summers, which is when I'm on tour. So half the time they come through my town, I'm on some other tour. When I go through his town, he's on tour. But I got to see him and spend the day with him and his girlfriend this last summer. And then my old bass player, Ben, he was a guitar teacher at the time, and he still is, which is both wonderful and frustrating when, you're teaching somebody your song and they start teaching you the mistakes you're making in your own music. But, yeah, he's still a guitar teacher, and he plays crazy technical death metal, and he sends me videos of himself two-handed tapping on a fretless bass. It's very impressive.
So you would know, in terms of music and death metal and stuff, because I've been sort of starting to listen to more of that kind of stuff, particularly the older stuff, like
I would know the older stuff.
Yeah,
I'm old myself,
and like especially thinking about the bass aspect of it. yeah, Cannibal Corpse.
I knew that's where you're going as soon as you said older death metal and bass.
Yeah.
Alex Webster and Steve DiGiorno. But yeah, Alex Webster is Alex Webster is probably, I mean, Chuck Schuldiner gets called the godfather of death metal. And, you know, as far from a writing standpoint, that you could definitely give it to him. But Alex Webster is one of the nicest. So Cannibal Corpse is like an institution at this point. They're some of the nicest guys. They bring the young bands out on tour. They help people. Cannibal Corpse is like the bedrock of the death metal scene. And that's great. Like, they got Eric Rutan on guitar now. You know, I was just telling a friend yesterday, there's nobody that knows more about American death metal guitar than Eric Rutan. I mean, the guy was in Morbid Angel. He's been producing, you know, he's been producing death metal albums I had him on my TV show when he was with his band Hate Eternal. Cannibal Corpse is awesome. Yeah, there's death metal bass is Alex Webster. I mean, there's wonderful bass players out there. God, I can't remember his name. The guy from Origin and Cephalic Carnage, total shredder. A lot of great Cryptopsy. Again, I don't know his name, but they have. I've known it. I don't remember it. Amazing bass playing, just, you know, game changing.
And I think that's one of the things that you know, that I actually really do like and enjoy about listening to some of this stuff, because bass is a real feature of it, and actual like technical.
Unless you're Metallica.
Yeah, it's just absolutely front and center of a lot of it. But obviously there's some amazing guitarists as well, and amazing kind of like necrophagist, you know, that sort of tech death stuff as well. That's all absolutely incredible in terms of like shredding and, you know, but it's not necessarily shredding, because it's really kind of musical and melodic.
You can be melodic and shred. You can also be atonal and shred.
Yeah.
I mean, but death metal, like Necrophagist, uses a lot of melody.
Yeah.
Morbid Angel and Suffocation do not. Like, you know, there's some death metal bands that are so much, you know, double minor and chromatic and just disjointedness. And I love that too. Like, Suffocation is some of the hardest music I've ever tried to learn on guitar, just because it makes no sense musically. Everything is random triplets and chromatic runs that never repeat. And I mean, and the end result is just a sonic beatdown, and I love it. But yeah, it does not make for easy guitar playing.
No, it's not all stuff that you can play along to. And even like, I was just trying to like learn the riff to Hammer Smash Face, and it's even that is, you know, I'm finding that quite challenging. But I'm not very good.
Hammer Smash Face is not particularly easy, but that's, you know, where death metal begins. Like, death metal begins difficult and
it gets harder.
Crazy. Yeah. The difference between, like, I mean, yeah, I was playing Hammer Smash Face last night. It's not particularly easy. There's some string skipping. You got to jump up and get that, you know, hit that sixth fret.
Yeah.
But I mean, the difference between that and like Archspire, where everybody's unison tapping on everything, you know, like death metal's always sort of been the propeller pulling music faster. I mean, black metal's fast too. And, you know, grindcore's fast and all that.
What do you think of like a band like Gorguts?
Gorguts?
Yeah.
We're getting into pretty technical death metal now. Gorguts is great. I've never gotten too deep into Gorguts as like I have with Suffocation and Morbid Angel and some of the others. I think they're Florida. I don't know any of the guys.
I think he's Canadian, isn't? I think originally.
Yeah, that might be right. Canadian sounds right. Yeah, Canadians do some pretty crazy death metal.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I have a lot of respect for them. I've loved everything I've listened to, but they're not one of the bands I've tried to learn per se.
Mm-hmm.
I would. I mean, yeah, it would not be easy, but I'd pick up. I'd mess with some Gorguts riffs. It'd be challenging. Be a good way to push myself.
Awesome. It's just that this is all new to me. Like literally in the last year, I've only.
Oh yeah, no, it's a whole, and I was just talking to one of my old roommate actually, is a death metal bass player. He plays in a couple death metal bands, but he's also the metal bass instructor at Musicians Institute in LA. So, I was just telling him, I love that not only can we speak death metal, but he speaks music theory at a very high level. Mm-hmm. So I could say, hey, this is great. And he'll say, here, take this scale and have fun with it. He speaks like on a level I don't when it comes to theory. He sits there in the lab all day long. So yeah, and forgot where I was going with that thanks to the ADD. But yeah, I remember, when my first death metal album was Morbid Angel's Covenant. And that was such a game changer because that would have been 94. And so I was listening to, I thought the heaviest thing you could do on a guitar was like Hell Awaits or Chemical Warfare, where you're trim picking a low E and then just stabbing some power chords. And then I heard Morbid Angel, and I'd never heard, blast beats or just swirling harmonic minor guitar. And it was just, and the level of evil, Hell Awaits was evil, but God of Emptiness is just terrifying. I thought I was going to hell for listening to that. And, and this was back when, you didn't have the internet. Right now you could be like, oh, death metal, Cannibal Corpse. And you just Google Cannibal Corpse. And the first thing that shows up is a picture of George Fisher with an arm full of teddy bears, which is great. He's the nicest guy in the world. And what he does with the stuffed animals is awesome.
Oh, but, that is so nice, isn't it? What he, that is a really lovely, and like you say, it speaks to how nice they are as people. And
they're humanized. But when I first got Morbid Angel, all I knew about the band was that the album cover had some sort of pact written in blood, and the music was terrifying. And you open it up and there's all this, Old Testament violence and, wood carvings of demons coming out of the water. And it was just terrifying. And, there was no reference. That was it. It was, did these people summon Satan and put him on this record? You had no way of knowing otherwise. But funnily enough, I think that's how I felt about Guns N' Roses when I was a kid. When I first heard them, when I first started getting into them, like Appetite for Destruction, like you say, you've got this cover where they're like skulls, and you kind of look inside in the inside you've got the actual artwork that was supposed to have been on the cover, which is a pretty weird, the Robert Williams painting, scary picture to see as kind of like an 11-year-old or something. And all the songs are kind of I always say that it's like reading a dystopian novel. It really kind of creates this bleak, gritty sort of picture about their lives and experiences and everything. And then at the same time, like you say, you don't have the internet, so you don't kind of know really anything about them as people, but you read, you see the news and you read magazines and newspapers, and they're always like getting arrested for, various things, and like drugs and being, drinking and driving and stuff. And you think, oh, Axl's a really, really dangerous, scary kind of person. And this is a really, quite a scary band. They seemed really
like
they were authentic,
hardcore.
They were authentic. I mean, that was I felt the same way. No, when I first heard Appetite for Destruction, I was listening to Def Leppard. And
yeah, exactly. Me too. Bon Jovi.
And they were great. Pour Some Sugar on Me, but they're smiling and pour some sugar. It's all major key and like shaking their butts, and then and then Guns N' Roses came out looking. They were dangerous. They were legitimately dangerous, and I picked up on that. Like when I was a kid, the songs on TV, like Welcome to the Jungle, was spooky. And I knew about Hollywood. It was a couple blocks from where I lived.
Yeah.
So I wasn't ignorant. I knew that this stuff was going on. But that was real. That was punk rock. They brought the authenticity of, fear and Black Flag to the, debauchery of Motley Crue. Mm-hmm. And, with the sleaze of bluesiness of Aerosmith, like they were all of that.
That's it. It's like they weren't, like you say, Motley Crue, Aerosmith were these kind of like sort of glamorous type, New York Dolls, all those kind of things were kind of sleazy but glamorous in a way. And then Guns N' Roses came along and they just seemed like not as glamorous, like more gritty.
They definitely, they had a bit of the flair to them. They dressed like
image, and obviously Slash has the iconic image. Mm-hmm. Like
they did have the glam look to a degree. The tight red leather pants and some androgyny and stuff. Which was everyone did at the time. But they definitely weren't faking it. Mm-hmm. You could tell that like compared to like Nelson, and I love the brothers are super nice guys. I've hung out with them. Wonderful, wonderful people. But they're squeaky clean and they're made for, or like you had all these radio ready bands, and it was the MTV era where everybody wanted to look tough, but a little bit safe and get on, the labels. They wanted to be in charge of stuff. And then Guns N' Roses came out like the Sex Pistols, if the Sex Pistols could play. They had all that attitude and grit, and they were the perfect the complete package. And they're still one of my favorite bands. Like I when I'm with Guns N' Roses, that's home. That's Slash's family. I just saw his son London play a couple days ago. I drove out. That's where I belong. Mm-hmm. That's musically, that's my home.
And that's absolutely incredible to have sort of grown up with their music and idolizing Slash, and then to one day end up in a position where that's what you do for.
Oh yeah. I recognize how lucky I am, especially when I first started working for him. I felt like a kid that got adopted by Santa Claus. Yeah. Like I'd been in the music industry, but at the time I was working for Anthrax. So I was touring and going all over the world.
Cool. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, they were great. And I was part of the music industry. I knew people, but then all of a sudden I was at the very top. Like I went from opening for Metallica to being, Ozzy's guest. So,
and obviously, like, you've got to that position by being incredibly good at what you do. So how did you get so good at that? How did you develop that particular kind of skill set to be chosen as Slash's guitar tech?
So we all start, pretty much all guitar techs start as guitar players. Well, okay, that's not true. myself and a great many guitar techs start as guitar players that just start tinkering with our own gear. Other guitar techs just start off as friends or family of a band and hop on the road. And like, I know guitar techs that can't play. They've just always been a guitar tech.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's true. I know that, I think Kurt Cobain's guitar tech, Ernie Bailey, like, he started off, it was in a pretty random way. He owned a coffee shop and stuff. It was, it was just a fairly kind of random thing. Like you say, you get to know people and then you get asked to help with something, you get roped into helping, and then you start sort of learning, you learn on the job kind of thing. But you, as you were saying, started off as a guitarist who was into modding guitars and stuff.
And then I made when my TV show folded, I made a conscious decision to be a guitar tech. I knew the job existed, and I knew that I liked working with gear, and I've always liked working with tools. I've been very, in my non-guitar world, I'm a woodworker. I work on my own cars. I'm not a gearhead. I don't supercharge them and race them or anything, but I just put my own snow tires on. I change my own oil, stuff like that. So I've always been a big fan of tools. And then, when I decided I want to be a guitar tech, what I did was I went to Musicians Institute, to the Guitar Building Academy, knowing I wanted to be a guitar tech and not necessarily a guitar builder, but I knew I was going to learn more about guitar construction and mechanics and all of that than I would have learned that anywhere else. So I did that for 6 months. I built some guitars. And while I was there, there was a guitar store there in Los Angeles and Hollywood called Black Market Music that was all used gear. Wonderful guitar store. It ended up, it hasn't been there for a long time now. But and a lot of bands, guys in bands would work there when they weren't on tour, and then other bands would come in and like offload their gear at the end of, Motorhead would come off tour and then sell the backline they just had, or John Frusciante would get his free Stratocaster from his Fender endorsement and trade it for heroin. So I knew all these people were shopping there, and I went there, and at my guitar school, they had us learning guitar repairs, and they just had a pile of donated guitars that, had been refret 75 times for no reason other than somebody could learn how to refret it. So I went to the owner and I said, hey, I'm over here learning how to work on guitars. Why don't you give me your broken guitars and I'll fix them for free? And, it sounded like a good deal to him. I'd done, he kind of knew me. I'd done some business there over the years. So he said, sure. And he had me working on his guitars, and the guys in the store knew that I was a guitar tech, or wanted to be. And so Todd Youth was working at the store at the time. He'd played in Danzig in the past, but at the time his band, the Chelsea Smiles, had just been signed to Capitol Records. So they were sort of the hot thing around Hollywood. And I started doing local shows with the Chelsea Smiles. Todd has since passed away. And then Christian from the Chelsea Smiles is in Stone Sour now and plays with Corey Taylor, still a good friend of mine. And then Carl Rockfist from the Chelsea Smiles is now, he's been with Michael Monroe a long time. So I get to see him whenever I go through Finland usually, or when Michael Monroe comes through, because obviously, as a lot of people probably know, Michael and Slash are good friends. Yeah. And I worked for Michael Monroe in the past too. So it's a family. So then I was working at that store, and shortly after I finished my guitar building class, Black Rebel Motorcycle Club called, and they need, their guitar tech couldn't finish the tour he was on, so they needed a guitar tech, and the guys at the store just said, don't tell them it's your first tour and have fun. So they sent me out there, and I did 3/4 of a tour, and that was my introduction.
Oh, amazing. I love them. What can you sort of remember about that experience? What was really kind of stuck with you from that time?
Well, this was my first tour. So this was over 20 years ago. I quit drinking in 2007. This was before that. I was pretty drunk, and that's not good for a guitar tech. Even before I quit drinking, I realized I shouldn't be drinking as much as I was on that tour and working. But that was sort of the vibe of the tour. You know, they were young and everybody was drinking, and it was a party tour. You know, we trashed backstages and hotel rooms. You know, I haven't trashed a hotel room in a long time, but it was that kind of tour. And that's what I remember. You know, I remember it was my first time. I'd traveled a bit, but it was my first time touring where you hit every city. So I'd never been to Minneapolis before.
Sleeping on a tour bus and
sleeping on a tour bus. I mean, I took to it really well. Like, you know, being in the military, you know, I could live, you know, you could put me in a group of strangers and I'm okay. Mm-hmm. You know, the social aspect and the work aspect, I'm fine with. Even more now, like you could put me on a crew full of strangers. I could show up in the morning and not know everybody, and by the end of the day, I have 5 friends. Though when I'm doing one-offs, you know, I'm a lot more focused on the gig than socializing. You know, everybody's like, "Hi, welcome aboard. I'm Steve." I'm like, unless your name is, you know, Red Les Paul, and I use you on song number 4, I don't have time to remember you right now. But like, so yeah. My first tour, I drank too much. I learned a lot. I couldn't keep his guitars in tune. They were very understanding, really nice guys. It was an eye-opening learning experience. It was a lot more of an adventure, and you know, it was seeing like, oh, it was wonderful. And you know, you come home from your first tour and you've got a big head because you've been everywhere now and you've been on a bigger stage than this. I've fucked up bigger shows than this one, you know? So yeah, I mean, you get a little bit of an ego, maybe. I mean, I'm long past that. I don't need to prove who I am to anybody anymore in this business. You don't know. That's okay.
No, but I think that's part of that. Again, that's part of it, isn't it? That's part of the learning curve. And
oh yeah, no, I was cocky. Everybody's cocky when they start.
And you kind of have to be, I think, because you know you have to kind of you have to project a certain amount of confidence, because, like you say, you know, they, like whoever it was who said to you, "Don't tell them it's your first tour." You know. Mm-hmm.
Well, and especially now, you know, now I'm stage manager, so now I walk into a building and I don't know anybody, but I'm in charge. Mm-hmm. And so you have to have, you know, you have to
give people a sense of confidence in you.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, after 20 years and doing this, like, I'm okay being in charge, you know, and I always know, and, you know, just networking. I know that I can't answer every question. I don't know everything. But I know somebody who does, you know, and that's one great thing in the guitar business, especially if you've been doing this a while, is like, you know, the level of support, especially working for somebody like Slash, you know, if my Marshall breaks, I call the dude that made it. I mean, Jim Marshall's not with Marshall anymore, but like, you know, if you're on tour with Guns N' Roses and your pedal breaks, you call the guy that designed it. You know, you're not searching for, I mean, you search forums, but the level of, you know, I'm friends with not every guitar tech, but I'm 1 degree away from every guitar tech. So when I had like, you know, I was sitting there, I was like, I'm having this issue trying to get my MIDI to work better. You know, like this MIDI unit I'm not using working well. So, you know, like my friend that works for Def Leppard's like, hey, why don't you check out this thing that our friend from Metallica is making? Oh, okay. So I email our friend from Metallica, and he sends me a unit. Like, yeah, and let me know what you think.
Exactly. So I was going to say it is a pretty small world. I think in terms of like once you're at a certain level and you're part of the crew, you know, and I think there's quite a lot of crossover as well, because you know people tend to kind of then do the rounds of working with.
Oh yeah, there's a number of techs like I've worked with, you know, with anytime I work with a new band, I usually have toured with 2 or 3 of the people on the tour before.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know each other. I mean, I don't know every guitar tech, and like, you know, there's sort of bubbles, you know, like if our like Slash's band is really close with the Aerosmith band, so like I know all the Aerosmith techs, whereas like, you know, like say for example, you know, Pearl Jam is equally big, but that's sort of a different circle. Yeah. So I don't, you know, if I went to a Pearl Jam show, I'd be 1 degree of separation from everybody, and we'd have so much in common, but I wouldn't necessarily, you know, I don't know who Mike McCready's tech is right now. I'm sure we'd hit it off and have a million things to talk about.
You do know Jerry Cantrell's guitar tech?
Brian Herb.
Yeah.
He's one of my best friends, yes. Yeah, and that's the other thing is, you know, the guys that we do tour with, we share a bond that, you know, especially me and there's been 2 other Slash's guitar techs in my time. Adam Day, most famously, who has been with Slash since, you know, the Use Your Illusion days.
80s, yeah.
Yeah, and his current tech and myself. And there's definitely, you know, when one of us is having a rough day, the other 2 of us understand on a level no one else can, you know.
Sure.
So, and yeah, Brian Herb just texted me, I think 2 days ago. Yeah, we're very close. He and I have done, I know we did Bush together for a while. I'm trying to think if we've done any other bands. But yeah, I mean, there's like other guys like Takumi and I have done several different bands.
Sambora's tech.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've done, he's also Gavin Rossdale's tech on occasion.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
And I've been Gavin Rossdale's tech, and Takumi's been Chris Trainor's tech.
What's the link there? Because I know that Jerry Cantrell's quite close to Gavin Rossdale. Like I know they played together quite a few
Bush
times.
is the connection. That's where I met. That's where I met Brian. Though I think I might have known him before that. I mean, we all do shows together and tour together. Yeah. So yeah, we work together mostly with Bush, and then you know, Brian went on to do Jerry, and then Small World, the guy that Slash's guitar tech right now, was Jerry Cantrell's tech for quite a while. So we all know each other.
Exactly, yeah, because I know Jerry's big mates with Duff as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, in all fairness, everyone's friends with Duff. He's like the nicest guy in the world. So.
No, that's true. That's true.
Saying you're a friend of Duff is like saying, "Oh, I go swimming."
Yeah. You'd be hard pushed to find anyone with like anything negative to say about him. He is an absolute legend, and like you say,
if anybody's walking around bad mouthing Duff, that's on them. I don't hear it.
But yeah, I sort of, you know, try to kind of keep up to date with like who everyone's tech is and everything. I find it super interesting.
I don't even keep half the time. I'll be at a festival and people are like, "Hey, who are you here with?" I'll be like,
"Oh, one of them,
Weezer."
Yeah. I was going to ask as well. You said something a minute ago about gear and, you know, calling the person who made it and stuff, and just thinking about like the rig, Slash's rig, I suppose. Like it's I'm guessing it's fairly kind of straightforward, and he's not a guy that like has an enormous pedal board. Like we know he uses his signature wah pedal, but does he, you know, does he use a bunch of other pedals? I don't. It doesn't sound as if he does, but
he uses. So depending on the size of the rig, he doesn't need many pedals at all. Like 98% of the pedals is a boost that just boosts solos. That's usually a clean boost.
but there is like a little bit like here and there, like of a, there's delays in there. Then, he'll have a chorus on like maybe one bridge of one song or a phase or something like that. And all of those effects are in there. So in the big rig, the Guns N' Roses rig, it's not terribly complicated. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of redundancy. Yeah. So like, there's two of everything, and it's all mono, but two amps, two outputs, so in the end, it's a lot of, I think the best way to explain it's a lot of simple things, and it's a lot of high end things too. People, Axient wireless, a lot of channels of it, a lot of switching. But
I'm guessing that you control all of that, because like you never see kind of Slash, going and like.
No, the only control he ever has on his own is the wah.
Yeah.
Occasionally he'll sit in with somebody or something like that, like, or jam and just say, just put my wah and a boost at my foot or something like that, and he'll forget to hit it. But yeah.
But it's you doing, controlling it really. Yeah.
Or whoever his tech is.
Or whoever's playing that show.
But yeah, his tech is running all the effects 99% of the time.
Yeah, but it's like you say, it's there's not that much to it, and it's the sound is coming from him rather than his gear and his rig.
It's a lot of redundancy, and it's a lot of bulletproofing, but yes, the Les Paul into a Magnetone now is what you're hearing. Yeah. That's you could hand him his Les Paul and an amp and a wah, and he could play the set. Yeah. And, delays and phasers, that's all nice, and it's a little bit of color. And the switching involved in getting all that in there, especially at a redundant professional level. Yeah, if you look at the rack, there's going to be, Gizmodo stuff and WYSICOM and a lot of really high-end switching, power supplies, routing. So it is a complicated piece of gear, but the end result is fairly transparent.
Yeah, but basically, what you're hearing is more or less what you can see him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is kind of what that sort of seems quite obvious, really. But has it changed very much at all over the years, or do you?
He changes. Yeah, I mean, he's always tweaking a little bit, not always, but he went from the Marshalls to the Magnetones when I was with him. He used a couple different Marshalls throughout. We started with the 800s. I think we started with an AFD 100 and a JCM 800, and then we went to two JCM 800s, and then we went to Silver Jubilees. So he'll change, but he always sounds like Slash, and he always will sound like Slash. He's not really trying, and he'll update things, but he's not trying to change the core of what he sounds like. He's not trying to reinvent himself. He just wants to sound like the best Slash he can.
And I guess always like the same strings, the Ernie Ball 11s.
Yeah, they'll send us new alloys and stuff to try out, but it's mostly, he doesn't, at one point they were sending us strings that were sounding different, and, he said, well, why can't I just play what I've always played?
All right,
But he has his own Slash signature strings now, and a lot of that's to prevent breakage. That was why they developed the Slash signature strings, is because he is, he has a very acidic sweat, and he's very physically. I mean, he's got forearms like Popeye. He's one of the strongest.
He is kind of he's
very muscular
unit. He's indestructible, isn't he? He's like, there's going to be, at the end of time, I think there's going to be like cockroaches and Slash like that.
I mean, as his employee, I like to think he has a lot of longevity. He's in great shape.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's very, being Slash's guitar is kind of like, Shaquille O'Neal's probably not very easy on his shoes.
Mm-hmm.
It's that level of, Lewis Hamilton's not easy on his tires, So.
Yeah, no, and I've seen, his, a lot of his guitars, they are quite road worn, shall we say.
Yeah.
And
he plays with jewelry on. He plays, and sweats all over him and bends strings. And I mean, he's never careless, and he plays a lot, obviously. I mean, he changes main guitars very frequently. There's always the Derrig, the main guitar, but that only comes out in the studio, so it doesn't get excessive wear. But if he played one guitar all the time, we'd be changing frets every 6 weeks. Yeah.
And I guess, like you say, it's just a case of using it so much and being, such a physical performer and player. So yeah, but that's kind of quite interesting about like, the string wear. But you could say the same thing. There are other players as well that famously had acidic kind of.
I don't know of anybody else that breaks string or is hard on his guitars as Slash. I mean, not even. Zach Wilde, I don't think has the same. I've been friends with a number of Zach's techs, and I don't think he has quite the same issues. Yeah, Slash. I love the guy, but if it can break, he'll break it.
Okay. Well, I think it's all it's fair enough in the name of delivering that performance.
Oh yeah, no, that's what it's
about, isn't it?
If strings go by the wayside, that happens. Yeah,
exactly.
But we do everything we can to his guitars to prevent string breakage, and it's not a huge issue. But when you break a string in front of a lot of people, you don't want it to happen a second time.
No, absolutely. But like you say, you've planned for that, you've prepared for that.
Yeah. But nobody likes breaking a string. You're using it. Yeah. Like, bink. Oh shit! I was using that string.
But at the same time, I think it's cool that he's not that precious. He's not that overly precious about like his. I mean, I know he's got certain ones that, like you say, he only uses in the studio, mm-hmm. and a lot of the ones that he uses like on tour are replicas. But they're still really nice guitars, and so. But he's not too precious to kind of, about getting wear on them and stuff.
No, they are tools. Like I've walked into the room and there's, his number one guitar, and he'll just like set it on a stool all precariously. And I'm like, Jesus, You
see, and I'm like I'm not like that, and I get upset if I just like walk past and knock into a guitar or something, and I'll panic and grab it and be like, it's kind of it's a whole different sort of mindset, I guess. But I have heard
they're made to be played, and I mean, he does have guitars that you would think are meant to be babied, like late 50s Gibsons, and he'll play them in the studio. I mean, he doesn't, he's not swinging 58 flying V's over his head carelessly, but he buys them to use them,
and you should, and so you should. And
God, no, if I had a 1958 flying V, that thing would, I don't like them just because, you're sitting there, you're a little bit flat, and you're going to tune up your D string, hoping his $20,000 tuner doesn't just die in your hand. I don't like them.
Yeah, I think that's more of a concern if you're not Slash, obviously.
Yeah, I don't have the and I mean, he has the $20,000 to buy a new tuner, but they're finicky.
I have heard you say there was one interview I was watching that because obviously you love guitars like we all do, and I think you've said that you're sort of more into collecting them than he is.
That was at the time.
Okay.
I remember that video. That was 2012.
Oh, has that kind of changed? Have you kind of slowed down with that now?
No, he started picking up.
Oh.
With the and I did. I mean, I was in the middle of a collecting phase at the time. I was pretty new to working with Slash, so that was sort of the first time that I had a lot of disposable income. So I did buy a lot of guitars at the time.
I love that. I love that. I loved it. That was like, that's where you went first. It was like, right, now I can.
Well, and I mean, and I went and I bought all the guitars I wanted in high school and couldn't afford. That was,
what were those kind of first ones that you kind of got for yourself?
So I bought, I bought a lot of SGs. I didn't want SGs in high school. I got my first SG I was about 25, and it was my first Gibson, and I was playing Jackson, and I just loved it. And then I have that one. This was my first SG. I'd still consider this my main guitar. This was my main guitar in my band.
That's very, very, very nice. I always like the look. I like the look of an SG.
Yeah.
They're more, they seem more kind of playable than Les Paul. Because for someone like me, a Les Paul is very heavy and unwieldy, and the SGs always seemed a nicer kind of shape and weight.
They're definitely more. I always thought they kind of looked more evil.
Yeah, with the whole, yes, like the whole
looks like Angus's hat.
Yeah, but yes, it does have that connection with, or very much kind of AC/DC made it part of their image.
Well, not only AC/DC, but Tony Iommi is a huge SG fan.
Yeah,
SG guy. So yeah, I mean, I own a couple Les Pauls, and they're some of my best sounding guitars. Like the wood combination is, hard to beat. But here, let me show you my Les Paul.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and the sound of them is
here's one,
incredible, and they look stunning.
I don't know,
fantastic.
They all kind of look the same to me.
Really? What, the different bursts? You don't kind of have a kind of preference or a favorite?
I might catch heat for saying this. I mean, some bursts are darker, some bursts are lighter, some bursts are green, some bursts are orange. They've made a lot of very similar looking guitars over the last 70 years. So, yeah, and they play different, and like an R9 plays a lot different from an Epiphone and all that. But, when people post pictures of like, oh, check out my new Les Paul on Facebook, it's like, I don't really need to see it.
I've seen one.
I've seen a lot of Les Pauls, and unless yours has got a purple dragon painted on it or something, you say Les Paul, okay, I see it.
So, that's interesting, because of obviously Slash has got a lot of signature Les Pauls, which
and they do look different, and another thing,
they have like designs up the fretboard like snakes and stuff.
One did. One had that one. I think there's 51 of those, and they're very expensive. That one also has a carved snake relief on the body. He has one of those. Yeah, that guitar came out in the 90s. If you could find one, that's a house these days. But yeah, I mean, his Les Pauls are great. And I think I've purposely steered away from Les Pauls, especially since I've been with him.
Yeah.
Just because, to sort of have a little bit of my own identity. I mean, I I played Marshalls before I met him. You know, I played SGs before I met him, and if I played Les Pauls and Marshalls, I would just, I mean, I don't really worry about living in the dude's shadow, but that would just seem like I was setting up a house in his shadow, you know, like.
Absolutely.
I play a lot of the same stuff he does. I play the same string gauge he does. And a lot of it's because that's what's comfortable to me, because that's what I'm surrounded by, and that's what can be free. You know, like.
Yeah.
So,
yes, exactly. And
you know, when I'm changing Slash's strings, you know, it's not hard to take a set home.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of that goes along with, like, because that's probably a really good string gauge on a Les Paul.
In E flat, yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of
and
makes sense.
It's what I'm used to. That's what my muscle memory is, you know, from playing his guitars. That's what's comfortable for me. If I try and play a Fender scale guitar, and I played Gibson scale long before. My first guitar was a Gibson scale. It's a Jackson, but it's a Jackson Fusion, which is I have it right over there. Okay. It's a Gibson scale. So that's more comfortable to me. So when I play a Fender scale, it takes me a second to, you know, some of my fretting will sound a little weird because I'm fretting, you know, a little closer to the nut than I should be, because it's a little bit shorter scale. Mm-hmm. So when I order custom guitars, I get them Gibson scale.
And speaking of which, so I was going to ask you this question, and it may or may not, the answer may or may not be the last custom guitar that I saw that you've just got. But
I don't own that many custom guitars, so
I was gonna. So this might be a tough one, and I'm aware that, you know, I've taken up a lot of your time, and we're probably going to have to kind of wrap up. But I was going to ask you, if your house was burning down and you could only save, let's say, you know, one guitar and one amp, like one rig, you know, if you could only take kind of 2 bits of gear, what would it be?
So I went through something similar this last year. A pipe broke in my house and flooded my basement where all my guitars were.
No.
I was in Europe with Slash at the time. So while I was gone, strangers came in here and packed up literally all 40 whatever of my guitars and amps and disassembled my guitar studio. And I'm sitting there in Europe I'm like, I don't know who the hell's wrapping my cables. You know, I've got over $100,000 worth of crap in this room. And this is all what I own, you know?
Yeah.
And it was terrifying. And what's funny-ish is when I was on tour with Slash, and about 10 years ago, when we were on tour, a pipe broke in his house and flooded his basement, and insurance people packed his basement up and stuck him in a rental house. And I'd completely forgotten about that. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, Slash, a pipe broken, or, you know, like my basement's flooding and they're packing up my stuff. And I'm like, and he goes, yeah, I know how that feels. And I'm like, oh yeah, wow, small world. We've both been through this now. So
what were you panicking about the most? What was the kind of guitar that, or you know, that you were thinking like, oh, please don't let it be that one?
So I pose this question to myself quite a bit. I have a Les Paul Slash gave me for my birthday quite a while ago. It's stage played. It's a Gibson prototype for one of his AFD models, and it's a color he didn't approve of. They sent it to him and he played it and he said, make it a little darker red or something like that. So I have the only one that color, and he gave it to me for my birthday, and it hung in a museum with Rick Nielsen. So that's my collector piece guitar. You know, that's my favorite guitar player and hero gave me a guitar. But I don't really play it. I mean, I know it's supposed to be played, but it lives in a case. and I'll probably get buried with it. I play it occasionally to make sure it's still there, but it's not my main at all. That SG I showed you, the brown one, I consider that my guitar. That's the one I played the most. That was the one I toured in my band the most. That would be, very hard to part with. And then my first guitar, I learned on here.
First guitars are a really, really special thing. And if you're lucky enough that you have still got it and you didn't sell it or anything, that's amazing.
Nope. Right here, this.
Oh, nice.
This Jackson, it's a made in Japan Jackson Fusion, still covered in death metal stickers from the 90s. That
is absolutely brilliant.
I almost never play it. It's tuned to C. It's got a Floyd Rose.
So yeah, of course you're not. Yeah, if you're not playing in drop C, then it's not
C standard. I don't drop tune.
Oh.
So yeah, no, this is C to C. I mean, I obviously I know how to drop tune, but I came up in the pre kind of new metal drop tuning days. So yeah, I never really got into drop tuning. I didn't drop tune in my band.
No, and a lot of the early death metal stuff, it actually isn't in drop tunings anyway.
No, drop tuning didn't get popular until kind of the new metal era around 2000, I think. And at first I hated it because I felt like the easy button, like, oh, this is your, those are power chords now. Mm-hmm. And that's all anybody did. And I don't, like, when I play metal, I do a lot of Root 5 power chords, but I also do a lot of Root 4 and Root 3. So, I'm constantly changing chord shapes, with dyads, and I don't want to be, locked into, when I'm drop D, the relationship between your low E string and all your other strings changes. So I'm constantly transposing, and if I learn a song in drop D, I'll play it in drop D. But, when people used to come over to my house and I'd pick up one of my guitars and somebody tuned it to drop D, I was just like, ew, fix that.
That's brilliant.
And, you can't play. Cowboy chords don't really make any sense. So, yeah, drop D is the easy button if you just want to play heavy riffs with a couple fingers. But, and you get creative.
But if you, whatever tuning you have that guitar in, as it's got a Floyd, with a locking nut and everything.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to change.
You're not easily gonna be switching things up on that one.
Yeah, no, this guitar is in C with these strings, and if I wanted to go to E flat, that would be it's half an hour.
Change guitars. So what about the one you just got?
So that is my current love.
Yeah.
So this is my Sully Supernova.
Yeah.
Made by my good friend John Sullivan out of Dallas.
So what is that made out of? Because it's
made out of mostly Les Paul woods. So
really?
Yeah. It's this is a mahogany neck, and this is a mahogany body with a maple cap. So this is the same wood as a Les Paul.
Oh.
It has the pale moon ebony fretboard.
That's incredible. That's really beautiful.
Yeah. So this is a full custom.
So made to the Gibson scale length.
Yeah, it's Gibson scale. Yeah. And then, it's everything I asked for. Took quite a while to build it. Not terribly long, less than a year after the deposit. But this guitar, I tell people that when this thing showed up, it plays so good.
Like compared to my other guitars, it was like I had a garage full of Ferraris and then like an F1 car pulled in, and everyone's like, "Oh,
yeah,
that's fast." Like
yeah, like
so, yeah, this thing is
the neck looks very slim.
it's slim, but it's not,
Not thin, not like my Ibanez.
Yeah, it's not a wizard
neck, but it looks slimmer than like because the Les Pauls and stuff, they're quite
definitely slimmer than a Les Paul neck and a little bit flatter, and it really,
Well, yeah. What's the radius? Is it like?
I think it's a compound radius. I think it's a 14 to 16 or something like that. I gave him a lot of, I told him what scale length I wanted, but I also told, my friend John, like, make your guitar, like make me a Sully, put your neck on it, put your pickups in it,
Oh, and he's made the pickups as well. So then,
yeah. I gave him what I wanted, but I also didn't micromanage. When I order a custom guitar, I say like, here's what I want, and then you're the artist. I want a picture of a horse. Paint me a horse. Don't make it whatever. Make the horse do what you. Anyways, I'm losing my metaphor, but yeah.
And in terms of like the sound, did you sort of specify kind of what you?
I mean, I knew. I purposely asked for the Les Paul woods because I like the Les Paul wood combination. The darkness of the full-bodied mahogany with the maple cut. That's why Les Paul, I tell people, I try not to play too many Les Pauls where people can see me because I don't want to look like Slash. Mm-hmm. But if I'm in the studio and I need a really fat guitar, the first thing you reach for is a Les Paul. And that's why I got these woods. And it doesn't sound like a Les Paul. It doesn't have Les Paul pickups, doesn't have Les Paul fretboard. But that's okay. And I mean, with EQing and stuff, I can make it sound like whatever I want.
Exactly. I made a video on my channel about like tone shaping and using an EQ because I'd never had an EQ pedal before. Mm-hmm. And so I've just got one recently, and I was really amazed actually about what difference you can make just by using, I know you've got the parametric EQ and everything on, I've got a Boss Katana amp, for example. And
I don't think Slash has a parametric EQ in the rig right now.
Oh, right.
A lot of times parametric EQs are used often for like room tuning and stuff like that when you really need to notch out a frequency. Like if you're getting feedback at
which I do in
400K, scoop that out.
Yeah, I guess you don't have that. You don't really have kind of those issues when you're like playing a stadium or a festival.
Well, and we have EQs, but the minute the monitor guy in the front of house are going to do whatever the hell they want to with your signal. The monitor guy does what you want to with your signal because it's coming back to you, but it's the front of house job to make you fit in the mix. So if he needs to, brighten you up or cut your low end, or that's on front of house.
Yeah, it's a whole entirely different ball game, but just the point really about kind of how you can, you can kind of fatten out your tone if you need to kind of.
Yeah, there's a lot of
in the room anyway, using EQs and stuff. So it's not even always down to like the pickups, themselves or the woods. There's a certain amount you can do with just some very basic like playing.
Yeah, there's no shortage of ways you can change a guitar sound.
Yeah.
I know a guitar tech, I won't name any names, but we were on stage and, his artist was like, oh, this sounds a little dark. And he runs over and goes, oh, well, I can rewire your head to use EL34s instead of 6550 tubes. And I'm sitting there like, Jesus, and then when my artist is like, oh, this sounds a little dark. And I walk over to the Fractal. How's that? Better.
So there's an easy way and a hard way to do things. So like,
yeah, that's it. You know, try simplest approach first, and then you know, save.
Then re-engineer your gear. That's the last step.
Yes. Oh, brilliant! You know what? I really appreciate all the time that you've given me,
Sure.
because this has just been an amazing chat, and I'd love to I'd love to stay in touch if that's okay, because you know there's so many more things that we could talk about, but you know, and the only other thing I was going to say that I've got on my list is if there was a guitar that you could ever put into room 101 and never have to work with again, like, is there one, or are you just pretty happy with kind of all guitars as a guitar tech?
Some guitars are, I mean, I don't mind Floyd Rose's. Like I said, the 12-string Rickenbackers, I mean, they're rare. I've maybe restrung 3 in my career. It was Slash owned one and wanted to use it in the studio, so I put new strings on it, and I mean, he didn't even end up using it. So, you know, it's not like they're the bane of my existence. And then,
no,
like,
but if you never had to, you know, so if you never had to kind of touch one again, that would probably be.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't miss them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, any guitar that's that finicky and poorly designed, we just doesn't belong on the road, you know. I mean, pedal steels are a pain to work with, and Slash is playing those now. I've purposely, you know, when his tech now is like, come here, let me show you how this works. I'm like, I got to go do this over here, so I can't be asked to do that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, I help with the pedal steel, but that's a whole nother ballgame, and there's so many moving parts and fine tunings, and yeah, that's kind of a tech nightmare, but it's what we do. I mean, I've had worse jobs.
I'm sure, and I'm sure there are hundreds of probably kind of worse people that you could be working with as well.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I don't suffer people I don't want to work with in this business. You know, if I've turned down work because the artist was somebody I just didn't want to work for or be associated with, or, you know, had a reputation for being difficult, or, you know, like, had somebody offered me to work with P. Diddy, you know, you're like, oh, that doesn't look right. Not that I mean, that's not my sphere. I had no idea about that situation, but, you know, if something smells off or looks off, I don't need to take it, you know.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's a question of personal integrity, obviously.
Well, and I'm also at a position I can turn down work. You know, when you're starting out, if, you know, your job is to go work for a band you're not 100% on or not work, then you're more likely to take that job.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, you know, like I said, my friend who I met when he was with The Darkness, you know, he then kind of went on to do different things. And like, I can remember one of the things that he went on to do was to work with Shakira. And I know that, like, I know he wasn't especially fond of that particular kind of music. And that must be tough when you've got to, like, gig after gig after gig, you know, you've got to kind of listen.
Yes and no. I mean, you know, at a point, like, when you're listening as a tech, you're listening analytically. You know, you're not listening as a fan. Like, when I'm listening to the Matchbox 20, I work for Matchbox 20, and I'm not listening, like, singing along. I'm listening like, you know, like a geologist reading a seismograph. I'm not, you know, enjoying it. I'm listening for anomalies and, you know, discrepancies. But yeah, there was one residency I got offered for a pop artist that their music was very saccharine, and I sat there and I listened to some of it thinking, like, do I want this injected into my head for 6 months straight? And then the pandemic came, and that sort of went away. But yeah, I've sat there and wondered, like, is this a little too schmaltzy for me? Yeah.
Exactly. And you know, now he now works with Judas Priest. So I think that's much more, you know.
So that's over Cosmo.
Yeah. It's kind of, actually he works for Ian Hill.
Okay.
So yeah, he's kind of, that's much more his,
it definitely feels, when I'm with Guns N' Roses, I feel like I'm in the right place. If I'm, you know, there's been times I'll guest with a pop band, and you know, I'll be the right guy for that day, and I'll have a great time. But you know, I'll be like, this is someone else's gig. You know, like somebody else is a better fit for some of that stuff, and I'm happy to let them find that person.
Exactly. And you know, it's all work, and it's all, you know, you have to treat it all the same way, but at the same time you're still a person, and you've got your own kind of perspective and feelings about things. So it's obviously going to work better and mesh better when it sort of feels more like you, and you feel more at home.
And there's bands I love that I don't want to work for. You know, there's bands that I'm a big fan of, and I just know that, you know, if I went to work for them, I'd butt heads with somebody, and I probably wouldn't be a fan of the band anymore. So I just don't go work for them.
Yeah.
You know,
like you don't need to, as you say, and you're perfectly happy with where you are and doing what you're doing. And that's ultimately like what more can you ask for, really?
I'm very lucky that way.
Cool. Well, thank you ever so much. I'm gonna have to run because that was my son coming home from school. So
okay. Well, nice talking to you.
Amazing to talk to you. I've absolutely thoroughly enjoyed speaking to you, and as I say, you know, it'd be great to kind of stay in touch if that's all right with you. And yeah, take care, and you know, have a nice bit of time off, and
thank you.
You know, enjoy new parenthood.
I am.
Lovely. All right, I'll have a great Christmas as well.
All right, you do the same. Having a happy New Year as well.
All right, cheers, Ace.
All right, take care.
Bye bye.